update on the Climate Action Grant. So you will remember at our last subcommittee meeting, we ran out of time to have this item presented to us, and so in the interim it actually went to our SOF committee and was signed off them. So this is actually just ready to say that that is what has happened. So I think there's some words to put up on the screen, which basically just rounds it all off. So that the Climate and Environment Subcommittee note that the Climate Action Grant policy has been endorsed by the Strategy, Ops and Finance Committee on the 6th of April 2023. So the agenda item was left to lie on the table because of the lack of time from the last Climate and Environment Subcommittee meeting held on the 14th of March. Is considered closed, and the grants applications to be considered will be brought to the Climate and Environment Subcommittee later in the year. So that's when I think it goes out to the public for applications to be applied for, and then it'll come back to us. So unless anyone has any questions, yes, I actually will move that. Anyway, thank you, Councillor Coe. Seconder, please. Thank you, Mr. Judge. Thank you. So any questions? Yes, Mr. Judge.
Thank you, Chair. Good to see this here. The first round of applications for money in the financial year that's left to close is very short notice. So a couple of questions regarding that. Would a project have to be delivered within this financial year to be able to qualify for a grant? So could it be funded this year and then carried over? And then secondly, what sense do you have of there being a good uptake for this short-term $100,000? And if that isn't fully subscribed, will that be carried over into the following year? So it's 100 for the following year plus X dollars left over from the current year, or is it if it's not used, it's just gone? Thank you.
Kia ora. Good morning. To answer your question, the applications will be advertised on the 22nd of May. They close in the 9th of July, which is already the next financial year. But because it's better off funding, it has been ring-fenced for this purpose. So basically we are, it is, even though we start advertising this financial year, it's available to be spent next year. There is, in the policy, I think we do ask that people start their project within 6 to 12 months of receiving applications. So there is a time frame where council would want to see action actually happen with the money if a grant is given. If there is an undersubscription of the funds, we have to be honest that we didn't really consider that at this moment in time. So I would have to go back to the finance GM and have a conversation about that, because it's better off funding. But we're being positive and we think we'll be oversubscribed.
Thank you, Mr. Judge, for the questions, and thank you, Ninka, for your responses. So, as there are no other questions, thank you very much for. So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour for us noting this, say aye. Those against? Thank you. Motion is passed. So thank you very much for this. This piece of work, and it'll be really interesting to see what applications come in, and that will come to this subcommittee a bit later in the year. So now we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is we've got a report here, which is the local action plan update on waste management and minimisation. So I will ask, is it, obviously you've got Robbie here and Ninka to present the report. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou. For those I haven't met, my name's Robbie Stillwell. I'm the Waste Projects Manager. So I've been working on the regional WMMP development group since the middle of last year. So we'll take the report as read and get into any questions or comments.
Councillor Coe.
Yep, I have one around rubbish collection. So in the course of campaigning, it became quite clear that people dislike the fact that multiple rubbish trucks go around collecting waste. And I see we have written into here, the licensing of, waste disposal companies, blah, 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 blah. So we're obviously looking at continuing on that same policy of having multiple vehicles traipsing around our district. Is there an intention to change this? And if so, what's happening in that space?
What this local action plan sets out to do first and foremost is cover the program as we deliver it now, simply because we have to continue doing this unless until such a point in time there is a discussion on changing levels of service in this regard. And as many of you around the table may be aware of, that a new waste strategy has been published by the Ministry for the Environment, which requires organics curbside collection by councils by 2030. Is that correct? 2027?
27 for curbside and 2030 for food scraps.
For food scraps. So definitely this is going to be a topic to be debated on the long-term plan 24. But this has only been released last week, so we are leaving it in here to continue with the program as we are, definitely for the next year, because that's what we intend to do. And then we need to come back to discuss the implications of the new waste strategy, and that will be part of a long-term plan 24 discussion. But because this is a 6-year plan, and you need to cast the net wide, so to say, to make sure that you can carry on doing everything that you're doing, but you're also future-proofing the action plan to use levy funding for future actions. That's why it's both in there.
Can I just, do we need to wait for government changes in order to just go ahead and do what seems to be a logical thing to do? Can we not just review that policy ourselves?
We can review that policy every 3 years when we do a long-term plan, and we have.
Okay.
And we're currently going into the third year
okay.
of our long-term plan.
So-
So that is the cue for
All right, so
councils
we'll
to
be-
debate these big policy changes.
Okay, all right. And the other question I just had was around.
Sean. Sorry.
Oh, maybe if you want to answer your
Apologies.
next question. I could just add a little bit contextually around the number of truck movements, because it comes up, okay, it comes up on a regular basis. So I guess unless the government was to put in some sort of regulation to prohibit or regulate rubbish collection further, we can't actually limit the number of trucks that drive around the district. I mean, we could get back into rubbish collection, which has come up a number of times, but a similar situation exists in Wellington, Pororua. They provide rates-funded waste collection, and they still have the same number of external contractors operating in the market. So people desire a choice. So we can't prohibit trade to say you can only have one rubbish truck collecting council-funded rates rubbish, because you've still got then Enviro Waste Management, low-cost bins. They all operate across the region. And again, Pororua and Wellington City also provide rates-funded collection, and yeah, we could, and we've looked at that in terms of cost, but it wouldn't necessarily stop the number of truck issue. It would just mean that it's, I guess, a rate-funded service. Yes, we have looked at that in the past as well, but Nick is right. It was an LTP. I think it was about $5 million in that order to get back into it. But
a number of years ago, so it will be quite a lot higher than that. And the issue is as well with the new waste strategy, there's curbside collection, standardization across the nation. And actually it's a separate truck for glass, it's a separate truck for recycling, and they're adding a separate truck for organics. And then you have the rubbish truck. So this is a standardization regulated by central government, because they're also changing the waste minimization to reflect those changes. So there's very little we can do about that.
And just the other thing, while I think of it, is we talked earlier in terms of the strategy about engagement and whether we can be using counsellors more actively in terms of community education around waste minimisation. Because we're really pro at doing little videos now, aren't we, Sophie? And I think we can be out there sort of spreading the gospel around waste minimisation. So just something to think. You know, we're more than happy to do that because, yeah, get some videos going, have a little campaign based around our elected members.
So thank you, Councillor Coe. So now we have the judge.
Okay, thank you, Chair. 2 points. One is there anything that council can do to get these many trucks, which have a colossal carbon footprint because they're heavy goods vehicles to start with and they're stop-start? They really are the worst for emissions on the road. To get them to be electric, either because they are somehow, I know they're private providers, but either somehow because they're licensed to provide these services within our district, and that comes back to us and we have some authority there, or with regard to restricting access to council facilities such as transfer stations that say you can't bring a diesel truck in here. You're only allowed this electric or hybrid in the meantime, and carrot, stick. But just the first question there is, do we have any authority to intervene in that way and control their activity?
At this stage, no. A number of other councils in the region that are taking on large curbside contracts or are in the process of procuring that have made these sorts of requirements. But at this stage, we don't have that oversight. We can't make that a requirement. Ideally, something would sort of spill over from the other regions. It will become more common throughout the industry to have electric trucks as their general fleet, regardless of whether it's a requirement or not. It's going to become so common that hopefully the industry just follows on from that.
Okay, and then the second point, and I don't know if this might end up as a discussion through the chair. And the page 12, you've got the table with the action points there. And in the first block, down the bottom, you've got illegally dumped waste is removed from public spaces and enforcement action undertaken where possible. And the evaluation method is removed within 2 days. And while I understand that in simple cases, a load of stuff is dumped in somewhere pretty easy to pick up, and what's there is easy to pick up, and that seems quite reasonable. But I'm sure that Emerald Glen Road, Waterfall Road, that area, and other places in the district would be serious fly tipping zones. Is it credible to say 2 days removal at the drop of a hat from hard to reach areas for waste that might be actually difficult to remove because of its nature, because it may be commercial? And should there be another line item in there that deals with the more problematic things, that is more realistic and would lead to better outcomes and less frustration, and is just more realistic?
The 2 days is a KPI we've set and had for a long time in our district, in our long-term plans. The KPI means 85%. So of the 2 days removal, 85% of service requests we receive for illegally dumped waste has to be sorted out within 2 days. That means you would score 100% if everything was next to the road on a boom.
Yeah.
So that 85% does allow us to take into account the requests that we receive for Waterfall Road, a lot of them, Mangatooks, where people dump stuff off very large hills. And we usually get an abseiling crew in. It costs us a lot of money, and then we try to fish out everything that's below in a stream or on a hill. So yes, those take a lot longer, usually about 6 weeks or even 2 months sometimes, because we group them all together and they can go to various places. So that is taken into account when we report to that KPI on a quarterly basis. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very useful context. I'm sure that if some local residents saw the 2 days, they'd be
No, so
very keen to hold you
that's
to
why
it.
it's 85, so we can allow for
Okay.
those kinds of situations.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. So, Mr. Butler,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
questions?
Through you, fantastic to see that we're looking at household food scrap collection. That's something that I think should definitely be happening. But I was just bemused by the fact that it's by 2030. I was just wondering if there was an explanation as to why that's going to take 6.5 years to implement.
Yeah. So most of the actions under collections are a direct reflection of the New Zealand Waste Strategy, which was released, I think, only two to 3 weeks ago. So that sort of provides the context for what New Zealand is doing as a whole. So that action will get us in line with the waste strategy. It is a long-term goal. A number of regions are already bringing in that sort of collections. The Wellington region, Porirua downwards, are looking at bringing something in soon. So, I mean, that is the goal as stated in the waste strategy, but the market will develop quite rapidly in between then. It is sort of happening and developing behind the scenes at the moment, so it's not going to wait until, the first half of 2030 to think about it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, do you have an aspirational date that you'd like to have it in place by? I won't hold you to it.
Not at this stage. It's
Yeah.
still a lot to get our heads
Yeah.
around from the waste strategy.
At this stage, we haven't even considered the actual consequences for this council. Well, we're thinking about it, but it's a very early stages to say anything about
Thank you.
that.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Olsen.
Hey, thanks. Yeah. Hey, carrying on the same topic. On the green waste, so at the moment there is one of the companies that goes around who does collect green waste and scraps as well. So you pay for it myself. And actually, probably over 90% of our kitchen waste actually does go and then get recycled, which is good to happen. But what I was shocked to find out was that this is actually trucked out of the district when it could be recycled. We've got a company here next to, in Otahinga who actually does this and turns it into compost. So, why, is my green waste being trucked out of the district, which, gave me a bit of a shock. But when we come to this, when we do this, what I would hate to see is that all the green, this is collected, and then we actually pay somebody out of the district. First of all, we truck it out of there, which has an environmental impact, and then actually pay for another organisation to actually process it for us when we can actually do this within our district ourselves, and we should be supporting, the company that is doing it already.
All of our green waste is processed within the district. I can guarantee that. We're the highest per capita green waste diversion rates for the whole Wellington region. That green waste collection bin is green waste only, so there are no household food scrap collections at the moment. To be honest, once food scrap collection is brought in, that probably would be with one of our neighbours. We don't have the opportunity to process food scraps very easily within the district. But for green waste and garden waste, that goes to Composting New Zealand. We support their operations through leasing them an old landfill site. They've been there a long time now.
Are we sure? So so Waste Management is who collects mine, yeah. And when I was talking to the guy at Composting New Zealand, he told me that no, it doesn't go to them. Waste Management actually ship it out, truck it out with their other waste. Yeah. So that's what I was talking to to Composting New Zealand, and they said no, it doesn't come to them. It is trucked out.
We have absolutely no knowledge of this, and I'm doubtful that it's correct. So I would be interested, but we will find out.
I think it's worthwhile talking because
Yeah,
I
we
was
will.
actually
Yes,
talking to the
yes.
guys up there.
Yeah.
And the reason I went up there to talk to him was my one was not collected for whatever reason. So I took it up there to get rid of it. And when I said this, I said, oh, but they said, oh, and he said, oh, they don't bring it here anyway. They take it out of the district.
Someone's asked me that. I've been asked that maybe 2 times over the last 8 months. So it does come up every now and then, and I have looked into it. But that specific question about waste management collections, I'm happy to ask that question for you.
Yeah.
Look into it.
As far as we know, all collectors have contracts with Composting New Zealand to take the green waste they collect locally to Composting New Zealand.
Yeah, no, I'll check it. Well, I'll go and ask him again because, I was talking to him recently.
Mr. Mellon.
It was really just clarification. Is it you talking combined green waste and food waste, or you're talking just green waste? Because the two different processes in terms of composting. Composting operations at the landfill through Composting New Zealand can't take food waste through that process.
I think it depends on what type of food waste it is. So if we have greens and kitchen greens like salad type of stuff like that, then yes, we put it in with the green waste. Right. If you're talking about meats and stuff like that, no, we don't. So from your own kitchen waste, there's stuff which can be composted and stuff which can't. It depends on what side of it is. Yeah.
Thank you for raising that matter, and I think you've raised some good questions. So we have Kim online. Can you hear us, Kim?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Yes, off you go.
Mine was just similar. Thank you, Chair. Mine was similar to what I said before about the input. So we have, I see in your plan you've got education, which is key. But is that backed up with some kind of incentive for households who do, have the compost bucket, do the green waste? Is there an incentive in terms of waste to back up that education that eventually comes through the schools, comes through the children, comes home, and it's good practice to do that? But then where's the trade-off, I suppose? Do we have anything like that plan to link the education with an actual outcome or benefit to the household?
So we support households to compost. There's a voucher system. The main incentive should also be that it saves you cost on your waste disposal. As the prices of waste go up to reflect the increasing waste levy, then it will become more attractive for waste minimisation. It'll save you money as well as benefiting the environment. But our voucher system is going really good for the home composting systems. I think we've given out $840 vouchers to date for a composting system of the resident's choice, following on from a Love Your Compost workshop.
I'm probably talking more about reducing waste completely over the whole household, because if I look down my street, like all my neighbours have huge bins which are full to the brim, and like I've got the smallest bin on the road that probably gets put out 3 times once in a month. So is there anything that really targets that? Because I know there's the composting discounts, and that's great. And is there any support for those people doing the composting? But I suppose it's to take that whole pathway from the education that comes home with children right through. Is there anything targeted, or is it just the general, okay, if you reduce your waste, the bins cost pretty much the same, so there's no real impact? Do you understand what I mean? There's a general, okay, if you've got less waste, you don't have to have a bigger bin. But it doesn't seem to be getting through. So is there anything else?
The biggest incentive this council has provided, to be honest, is go to a user pay system, which is exactly this. It's a monetary incentive. If you do well in waste minimization, you can have a small bin every 2 weeks, or even probably only on a phone call you use it, or you bring it back to the transfer station. So you're minimizing cost and helping the planet at the same time. And in waste minimization education, price incentives are usually the strongest incentives we can give. Another important role for us is to be supportive. We do with vouchers, with waste levy grants for groups that want to do better, that want to share a bin between 10 households. All these things are options that are available to people here. And this council made that choice years ago by getting out of rubbish collection. So the actual cost of waste isn't hidden in the rates. It's quite visible that you pay a lot more for a large bin than for a small bin. So that is still a choice, and it's unfortunate that your neighbors make their own conscious choice to still pay for that large bin, whereas they could save money and help the planet along by making a different choice.
Yeah. No, that answers my question. I suppose what I'm getting to is that are they working? Is kind of my point. When I see what I see, are these incentives working, and are they working enough? But yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
So thank you, Ninka and Robbie, for bringing this paper to us. So I've got some questions as well. So this, so we've got the local one as well as the Wellington-wide strategy. And so this here is all part of a circular economy, which basically, which has a whole life cycle. And it seems to me that what we're probably focusing on here is the bit in the middle. It's about waste minimisation. And so there's actually two other ends to that. One is actually developing the waste in the first instance, and I think it's something that Councillor Hanford raised earlier on in terms of when we buy products, whether it's a supermarket or other places, they're often very well packaged up or in cardboard or whatever. And I think, if we could actually play some part in actually trying to encourage the packaging and packing of products to be reduced, that would actually help a lot. So then the other part of that too, and I asked for some comments on that, and the other part of that too is is its end life. And as Mr. Olsen, he raised the point about some of this, our green waste potentially going out of the district. My question when I was reading through this is how much of our waste does go out of the district? Because I think there was a thing on, I think it might have been Fair Go, no, it wasn't Fair Go, it might have been Fair Go a long, long time ago, saying that we were one of the worst councils to have our waste leaving the district. And, I haven't actually delved into that. Someone sent it to me, but I'd be really interested to know, have some thoughts on that, please. Now I've got another question after that, which is a bit different.
So on the first one, obviously local council can't encourage the whole country to, we can't achieve that circular economy. So that's one of the issues raised from the last plan, is what is actually achievable from a local government role, which is really, really important. But you can look at a circular economy on various scales. We can do small things locally, like organic waste in Paikakiriki is composted and used in gardens there. That's a really cool example of a small scale circular economy. In terms of a larger scale, which is obviously what we need, the unnecessary packaging, all of those sorts of issues, that does need to be led by central government. That's why I've included advocacy in the local action plan. I see that as we have a role, the joint committee has a role, council has a role to actually get these messages up the food chain a bit. So I think advocacy, while sort of trying to set an example of some form, some level of circular economy, is really important. On the second question, I think that was specifically related to the Hokio landfill, the issues happening there at the time, the debate over whether it was compliant or not. So our waste no longer goes to Hokio. That was done in 2021.
More than 18 months now. It's going to.
Yeah, and so there's no considerations or discussions about waste to be going back there. In terms of waste going out of the district, that is the norm now. Kapiti doesn't have the resources or scale to become a landfill owner, or the land really. It wouldn't be appropriate anywhere here. So larger sort of regional, even Bonnie Glen takes half the North Island's waste. These big centralised landfills, it's easier to manage the impacts of. There's less landfills around. they're managed better. It's the top of the line of landfills. So for our waste, even though it is going out of the district, there's a good reason for that. The gas capture is off the charts. You know, it's the best possible outcome for landfilling.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So my other question relates to, it's in the second part of, on page 12. It talks about implementation of various waste management and minimisation plans for both builders, I think it is, and I think there's events, and there's probably other things throughout this document, which is great. My question is, how certain can you be that these plans are actually being actioned? You know, so what is actually the, I suppose, the auditing, the follow-up to ensure that they are actually being abided by?
So event waste minimisation plans are reviewed by the Wasteman team. We've got some really good relationships with our larger sort of event organisers, so the event stuff is going really good. It's mostly voluntary at this stage. We haven't needed to enforce anything. But so there's two other things in there. There's the multi-unit developments and there's the waste minimisation plans for construction. So multi-unit developments, we've been doing that voluntarily with some developers at the moment. So they'll submit so that's for waste storage and collections to make sure that these new developments can actually store the amount of waste predicted. There's a calculator that sort of gives you some standard numbers. And then plans need to be approved by us. On development, we are waiting until we actually have an option. We can send developers to a zero waste hub to deal with their waste. Once that waste hub is operating, then we will enforce waste minimisation plans for building. So everything's there, the bylaws there. We just need to give people some options before we enforce a waste minimisation plan. So we need to set the value of what plans trigger a waste minimisation plan. Sorry, what else did I miss for that?
No, that's it.
I think that's it.
So that particular section of our bylaw hasn't come into force because we thought it wasn't fair to require developers or builders to, during the process, minimize waste if literally they couldn't go anywhere with it. So that's why we established the zero waste hub first this year, and then wood waste and other items can go there. So then it is a logical next step to come back to council, and by resolution we will then put that particular section into force, and part of that discussion will be over what kind of dollar value do we require developers and builders to provide that plan to us. But we work closely together in all those plans with the regulatory teams. For example, the calculator that developers now need to use for multi-unit developments to calculate space they need to provide for waste minimization on the actual site. It just comes to us just like it goes to the transport team or to other experts around council to provide input to an application. So it's part of the regulatory process.
It's becoming standard practice throughout the region as well,
Yeah.
so it's less of a shock.
Yeah.
You know, we're not just one district trying to do that. It's
All the districts in the bylaw, yeah, it's a regional bylaw, so we all doing the same.
Yeah, so thank you for those explanations. So when do you think they'll be coming to council for to be approved?
It will be probably somewhere around half next year, I would say. We
Oh,
first
really?
need to get the zero waste hub off the
Okay.
ground, and that is not
Yeah.
an easy or quick process either. So yeah, one step at a time.
Is it fair to say that the building sector actually have quite a big impact on our waste landfills?
I would say it's our largest waste
Yeah.
stream
So yes, so
for the whole
probably.
country. So we're not alone
Okay.
in that. Yes,
Okay.
we're very well
up
aware.
to 50% in some
Yes.
waste audits was divertible construction materials.
Yeah.
Yep.
So getting that over the line would have a really big impact.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So we now have Kim online again. Can you hear? Are you there, Kim?
Yes, sorry, no, that's my mistake. I just haven't put that hand down.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora. This is probably quite a specific question, so just let me know if it's not the right channel to ask it through. In terms of education and engagement and paper for trees, cloth nappy trial for preschools and enviro schools, I know there's been a little bit of conversation around enviro schools wanting to increase their provision in Kapiti and potentially, while they're really keen to, and while also there's kind of lots of things coming to fruition and on the cusp of us kind of furthering in the environmental and climate and waste space. Is that something that's still being quite actively looked into? Sean, I think that might have been on your desk to look into. Sorry, it's getting into a bit of the detail, but I just would like to have an update.
The discussion is ongoing. It is a discussion that will impact operational budgets and the rates number. But yes, we are definitely looking at it and considering it because we're quite well aware that EnviroSchools delivers that full climate change lens.
Yeah.
And that is an add-on to the zero waste education that we already deliver. But that is funded with waste levy money. So there's not a lot of rates money to go around in this space. So that's why the discussion is being held. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair. I guess the only thing to add there is it's a joined up conversation between the connected communities. That activity is run through that area of council. So, as Nink has mentioned, we've been working with them to see how we might be able to leverage their existing budgets to try and squeeze some more money out to actually help with that program. And because otherwise it's an annual plan conversation, I guess, around funding. So we're happy to come back to you maybe offline about where we've got to in that and what that might mean for next year if we can't find some extra funding.
It happens somehow in some way. So if that means putting some more funding towards it, whether it's next year, as you say, but keen to have an update offline. Thank you.
So thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the waste minimisation, waste management and minimisation report. We have a recommendation on page 9 that page 9, which is that the subcommittee receives the draft Kapiti local action plan for the new waste management and minimisation for information, and that the subcommittee provides comment, if any, on the draft Kapiti LAP. Can we have a move that in a seconder? All those in favour? Those against? The motion's passed. Thank you. So now we'll move on to item 9, which is the minutes of the last 2 meetings we have from page 17. Is there any comments, any changes to the minutes? A seconder? Thank you. So I have a question of staff. So I just want to clarify that for the last 2 meetings, that the presentations given in the updates will be included on the KCDC website of those presentations. I think that's been agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That is being worked on. There has to be a section on the website that we still have to build where we can upload that, and they're currently working on in the com space to get that built for us. And then once that's built, last time I sought an update, the time frame for the build was about 4 weeks.
Okay.
So hopefully soon.
Thank you very much for that. So, we've got the recommendations on the table. We've got a mover and a seconder. Sorry. Yes.
Sorry, Chair. I had a comment on minutes generally. I'm not disputing the minutes that have been put up and accepted. And this might be custom and practice here, but the minutes seem very thin, and that might just be the way we do it. Is there what is the protocol if anyone from the committee wanted to say something that they actually wanted recorded and to to appear in the minutes because it's particularly important to them or their community at a particular point they wanted to make, and they wouldn't want that just to be lost because they have a responsibility back to their communities to be raising things.
So thank you for that very good question. If I could ask council staff to respond to that, please.
I'll have a crack at it first, Madam Chair. I think during the meeting, if the member just signalled to staff that they wanted their comments recorded, then we would do that. I don't think there's any issue with that. Just looking at Steffi to add to that.
So if you had anything that you wanted to add, you could just signal to us. If it was something that could be misinterpreted, we would probably just flag that to you on how you would want to have that added. But I also would like to note that all of these meetings are actually recorded. So if there is a point that you're making and that you would like out there in the community, it is recorded, it's up on YouTube for them to watch. So because by reading minutes, somebody could actually misinterpret what is being written. So I just wanted to add that.
In my work life, I have to write minutes. Not something I enjoy, so you have my sympathies. But then I have to circulate them for comment and sign off before they can then get put up for voting on. So I understand that. I think that folk going to look at the YouTube, plough through the whole meeting, etc., is a barrier that won't be overcome, whereas looking at minutes is a lot easier. So while I accept what you say about that, I think it's a different thing. And can I request that it's recorded in the minutes that I raised the issue of 2-day clearance of fly tipping, and that it might be, and that further context was provided that was an 85% of times in the KPI by staff, as long as they agree with that as well. So
thank you very much.
I will be reporting this back to the community when they come and harangue me about, raise it with me next time.
Thank you for raising that matter.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Warwick.
On the 9th of February, I'm not recorded as being present, but then further down I'm recorded as left the meeting and coming back. Can I have that me put onto the list of people who are present, please?
Thank you very much. So we have a mover and a seconder, so we'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour for these two recommendations, say aye. Those against, the motions are carried. So now we move on to the last item. So item 10 is confirmation of public excluded minutes. We haven't had any public excluded, I don't think we have, we haven't had any public excluded meetings, so there are therefore no excluded minutes. And then, so the last item is actually a closing care. So Kim, I'm just wondering, putting you on the spot, would you be willing to give us a karakia to close our meeting today, please?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. Can we hear me? Good. Kia ora tātou, tātou e hui hui mai nei tēnei rā. Me karakia tātou, kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te ata whaiho tō tātou araki o ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairo tapu, ake, āmeni, wai tō rā.
Thank you very much, Kim. And now the meeting is closed. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.